Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham, Barakahak Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 1. And this entire chapter is dedicated to the biblical Edomites, or you so-called white people as you're known today, you Americans, British, Europeans, Russians, the small hats over in the Holy Land, etc., etc. And the header reads, Edom will be humbled. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen, that ambassador being the men of the Lord, the prophets of the Most High. At this point, if the spirit of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi is dealing with you, you can see that GMS, or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers that come in the spirit of GMS, have the spirit of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi on them. But the men of the Lord are out on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles online, being the ambassadors of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi, sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Hey, going into these prophecies and saying that, Esau Edom is at the end of his rulership, and his allies, these other heathen nations, they're going to turn against him. Verse 2, Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. And the reputation of these Edomites, especially in the so-called Western world, Western Europe, the United States, as well as the state of the 1948ers, is greatly despised by these other nations. They're seeing how duplicitous you are, that you're nothing more than, colonizers that go to these different countries and, bomb them to smithereens in the name of democracy to what? Steal their resources and create these false narratives to show yourselves as the good guys and them as the bad guys. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy or your allies have brought thee even to the border. And this is speaking of the allies of the United States of America, which are going to turn against her. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have lain a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. And America's own European allies in the EU and NATO are going to turn against her as well. As it said, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. At some point during World War III, that third woe in Revelation chapter 9, verse 12, America's Western European allies are going to turn against her and ally themselves with America's enemies, like Russia. They that eat thy bread, receiving all that money to upkeep NATO and these other European projects, have laid a wound under thee. Again, turning against the U.S. to ally themselves with Russia and using that very same money and different weapon systems and aid that they've got to further inflict that wound onto the United States of America. There's none understanding in him. And I opened up the video with these verses to preface an article on RT.com titled, NATO Won't Defend the U.S. Donald Trump says, the former president doesn't believe that bloc members will honor their commitments. And Donald Trump is right on the money, not because it's his own opinion, but because we have the scriptures and prophecy to know that these things will take place. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. NATO will not come to the rescue if the U.S. is attacked. Former President Donald Trump warned on Saturday. And hey, a lot of these situations you're seeing going on at the southern border with these migrants, and a lot of these other issues that are plaguing the U.S. are what? United Nations agendas, Agenda 2030. A lot of the powers that be, through the WEF and these other European organizations have it out for the U.S. Speaking to a crowd of supporters at a campaign event in Las Vegas, Nevada, Trump continued his criticism of the Western military bloc. We're paying for NATO and we don't get so much out of it, he claimed. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. And I hate to tell you this about NATO. If we ever needed their help, let's say we were attacked, I don't believe they'd be there, the former president said. I know the people, he added. According to Article 5 of the NATO Charter, an armed attack against one member state must be considered an attack against all of them. The statement follows a long history of complaints leveled by Trump at the U.S.-led bloc during and after his presidency. He famously ruffled many feathers in Brussels by claiming in 2017 that NATO was obsolete. He later repeatedly chastised Germany and other American allies for not spending enough on defense. That's it with this article. You get the point. But again, Trump is right on the money. When the chips are truly down, NATO or these other European allies of the U.S. aren't going to come to her defense. They're going to turn against her and ally themselves with America's enemies like Russia. And they're all together going to shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America, turning it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. Now let's get back into these precepts. This is Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 36. And this is dealing with the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar of the Neo-Babylonian Empire had of that statue of a man made of different metals. And those different metals represented the heathen kingdoms that would rule, in the last days before, the establishment of the kingdom of heaven. Well, let me reiterate that, really, the kingdoms, the last days really came, during the ancient pagan Roman Empire. That was when Yahushua, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus, came on the scene. And it says in Hebrews that when he came on the scene, that was the beginning of the last days. But regardless, these were the heathen kingdoms that would be ruling, the last heathen kingdoms that would be ruling before the kingdom of heaven under the children of Israel. The true children of Israel consisting of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as well as the Israelite foreigners who have been scattered to these different nations and over the generations have come to look like these heathens. But, the header reads, the interpretation, Babylon, the first kingdom. So that head of gold was the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now I'm going to jump down. Now we're going to the arms and the breasts of silver, which was the Medo-Persian Empire, then the belly and the thighs of brass, the Greek empires, which were started by who? Alexander of Macedon, Alexander the Great, as he's known, who was an Edomite himself. Now the legs of iron, the ancient pagan Roman Empire, which was also ruled by the biblical Edomites. Now I'm going to jump. Well, I'll read verse 40 and then go into 41. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Now we're going into the feet, part of iron, part of miry clay, which is the last leg, the extension of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron. And this is this current, Western power structure you see right now, the NATO EU alliance that the U.S. is a part of and at the head of, which, This place has a lot of the same symbolism and practices, governmental structures and laws and ideas as ancient Rome, because again, it's the last leg of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. And this all began with what? The Renaissance, or the rebirth of that Roman way, when Esau Edom came back into power after the so-called Dark Ages. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron. And that part of potter's clay and part of iron goes into a few things. You've got the stronger nations in this system, the part of iron, such as what? Britain, France, Germany, the US, and the part of clay, these weaker nations economically and militarily, which are usually referred to as the pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And it can also go into that part of iron being the NATO, which is the military aspect of the system, and the part of clay, the European Union, which is the economic aspect. And some nations that are in NATO aren't in the EU and vice versa. Part of potter's clay and part of iron. The kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And with Donald Trump making a statement that what? If the U.S. were attacked, NATO wouldn't come to her aid, that shows that this kingdom is divided, which we can clearly see, through a lot of the machinations of the U.S. A lot of her European allies over the years have been looking at her sideways. Whenever the U.S. has any military or economic, adventures abroad, who usually feels the blowback from it? Her European allies. For example, the refugee crisis from the Syrian civil war, the Libyan civil war, the war in Afghanistan. Where did the majority of those refugees go? Europe. That Nord Stream 2 pipeline destruction, who felt the brunt of that? Europe, especially Germany. And that drove a division between Europe and Russia, which, Europe at that time got a lot more of its natural resources from Russia, more at a cheaper price. But now that the U.S. has, stuck a wedge in that, Europe has had to turn to the U.S. to, get LNG or light natural gas at a much more expensive price. And now you've got the U.S., pushing for war against Russia. And who's going to be on the front line of that? Europe. Verse 42, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And we're coming into the times to where it's going to be completely divided, completely broken, where America's own allies at some point during World War III are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia. And what does the scriptures say about a kingdom being divided? This is Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And again, with that statement by Trump saying that that the U.S.'s own NATO allies wouldn't come to her defense, that shows that this kingdom is divided, and the house or the race of Esau is divided too. These European allies looking at the U.S. Edomites sideways, and vice versa. But now I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns is speaking of the European Union, the EU, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU back when it was known as the European Economic Community, which thou sawest upon the beast being NATO. These shall hate the whore, which when you go to the first couple of verses of this chapter, it talks about that whore being Mystery Babylon, Babylon the Great, which is one of the names for the United States of America in the scriptures. These shall hate the whore that rides upon the beast, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire from those nuclear missiles, that they, as well as nations like Russia, China, etc., are going to shoot onto the United States of America. Now I'm going to close it out in Jeremiah chapter 50. I'm going to start at verse 41. Behold, a people shall come from the north. And that north country is speaking of Russia, because Russia is north of the United States of America. And it's a well-known fact that Russia shooting its missiles from the north, as well as from its assets in that Arctic Ocean region, also in the north, would be the shortest trajectory time for those missiles to reach the U.S. And a great nation and many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth, from the ends of the earth. You know, these different nations coming against the United States of America, especially America's allies. The 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. They shall hold the bow and the lance. And that's parabolic for those nuclear missiles, because when the prophets saw these visions thousands of years ago, they didn't know what a modern day nuclear weapon was. So they described it as ancient weapons of war, bows and arrows, which arrows look like missiles. They are cruel and will not shew mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses. Everyone put in array like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon, that virgin daughter of Babylon. And when you go to Psalms 137, around verses 7 to 9, you'll see that the Edomites are synonymous with the daughter of Babylon. But now I'm going to jump up to verse 40. As the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, and ancient Sodom and Gomorrah was overthrown with fire and brimstone from the sky. And besides being known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, America is also known as spiritual Sodom and Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8, which it's very easy to see why America is known as spiritual Sodom. Look at what this country pushes onto the rest of the world. As the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith Yahweh, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. This modern day Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be overthrown with modern fire and brimstone, those nuclear missiles. Back in Revelation 17, verse 16, and they shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. This place getting hit and turned into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland where man, woman, or child will never set foot on ever again. And after a time, only harsh desert creatures will be dwelling here, as it says up in verse 39. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. And the former United States of America is going to stand as an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like, and what the judgment for it was, and what the judgment was for afflicting the apple of the Most High's eye, the children of Israel. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until